Hello, folks. Welcome to this week's edition of the Satori Traders Precious Metals News. Now, why are we starting out by looking at a chart of Bitcoin? One of the ideas floating around in the financial realm, if you will, is that Bitcoin and the cryptocurrencies and altcoins are absorbing investor and speculator money that would otherwise be flowing into the precious metal. And so, it's an interesting idea. I don't know what the truth of it is one way or another. What I am watching in the Bitcoin chart, and of course, I'm using this as my proxy for the crypto space. There's 5,000 different cryptocurrencies and altcoins, etc. Using a single proxy for 5,000 different financial vehicles is certainly less than ideal, but because I'm not really interested in speculating in the crypto space, that's what I'm doing here. I'm using Bitcoin as my proxy for the entire crypto space. And in this chart, what I continue to see is that the volume action is consistent with the downtrend. Every time price starts to sell off, volume rises. When price starts to rise, and of course this is last week's action, as price is rising, volume is falling off. And then on Friday, so we get this red candlestick on Friday, and look at that. Well, volume's rising again. So this volume action is very consistent with a downtrend. And so, and I just noticed, folks, if we look at, so here's a high, low, lower high, lower low. That's the definition of a downtrend. Lower lows, lower high, lower low, lower high. So definition of a downtrend going on in Bitcoin, and we have this big open gap down here in the 24 to 26 region, 26,000 region. So now it is possible as speculators, this could be a tradable bottom. Perhaps. We'll see what happens when we get there. But that's the first point at which I would be interested in the cryptocurrencies at this point, the alternative digital currencies. And so just as kind of exploring that idea this morning, I picked Bitcoin versus Tether in the weekly time frame, and what immediately jumped to my eye was this potential head and shoulders. This is a topping pattern. So potential head and shoulders topping pattern, the range, so from the neckline to the head is, what is that? That's 65,000, and 31,000 is 34,000 points. Well, that basically takes us to zero. The price target for this head and shoulders pattern is zero or lower, unfortunately. And so, I hadn't explored that, spent less than 5 minutes looking at this chart, but just something to keep in mind. Oh, and the reason I was looking at Tether in particular is that smoke on the horizon, every time I delve a little bit deeper into the crypto space, I see this idea that Tether is pure fraud and that somehow Tether is linked to and support the value or the price. Yeah, the price value. Well, and that's not even value. Somehow Tether supports the price of the other cryptocurrencies. And again, I don't know what the truth is. I haven't really delved into it in any depth, but in my mind, that's the smoke on the horizon. Tether is pure fraud. And when Tether collapses for whatever reason, we'll get to see which of the cryptocurrencies and altcoins, I think they call them, is swimming. So anyway, let's keep moving. I like to have a positive tilt on the precious metals space and the mining stocks every week. And so in the last 2 weeks, the precious metals space has gotten, beat up, hit, however you want to look at it, largely due to the unexpected strength in the U.S. dollar. And of course, we've had a number of U.S. Fed heads talking at us. And so anyway, here in Discovery Silver Corp, and we're looking in the weekly time frame, this is a over-the-counter listing. You can also buy this stock on the Canadian exchanges. So in the weekly time frame, we can see that in general, this is positive action. We have price rising steadily along the 10-week moving average. Moving averages are in bullish alignment, accumulation distribution. Investors are, they're not accumulating this stock aggressively, but they aren't bailing on it either. MACD remains in bull mode. Both indicator lines are above the zero level, flat, so just bumping along sideways. But, nothing we can really complain about in this action. And overall, it's positive. This is suggestive of higher prices to come. Obviously, we're dealing with this resistance level. Oh, and look, that's $2. So this is a $2 as support and resistance that we're dealing with here. So that's our positive mining stock chart this week. In general, for the last 2 weeks, the mining stocks have gotten beaten up. And of course, that's what we see right here is we've gotten a big pullback in the last 2 weeks. In gold, this is gold in the weekly time frame. Notice that all we have at this point is a 62% Fibonacci retracement of this big impulsive price movement that we got in 2021. So at least at this point, we're looking okay. The channels, based on these channels, there is the potential for some more downs, like price coming down here and testing the 70, what's that level? It's 70 something in the fib level. And it is the top of this channel, bottom of the upper channel. Price-wise, it's about 1720. So we might expect a little bit more downside to the 1720 level before price heads back higher. Gold in the daily time frame, same story. This is our 62% Fibonacci retracement level. Price is bumping along here, 1770. In general, these candles are somewhat bearish. Notice that we have longer wicks on the top of these candles than we do on the bottom. So, these longer wicks on the top are suggestive of sellers having the advantage or selling being stronger than buying at this point in this market. So MACD hinting at bottoming, with the histogram here starting to turn up, potentially the indicator lines starting to bottom out and potentially turn back higher. Real key here in MACD is that we've come back down to this. This is our oversold level in MACD. I've said this before. Note again that MACD is not a bounded indicator. MACD can go from negative infinity to positive infinity, but in general, it has a tendency to range or channel. And so this marker down here, this is an indication of an extreme oversold level in MACD. And notice that we are back down at that level currently. So this is a potential oversold level where price might find a bottom and turn back up. Energy, of course, is in the tank. Let's move on to silver. This is silver in the weekly time frame. And the real point here is that although this doesn't feel good, obviously, this was last week, this little short candlestick, this was the week prior. That kind of price action doesn't feel good, but in the big picture, it's really not a big deal. I mean, all we've gotten is a price pulling back to a support level, potential support level. And, this is my bullish bias, of course. Expectation is that price is going to find a support here and then head back higher. in this case, we have price sitting on this is the 40-week moving average. The equivalent in the daily time frame is the 200-day moving average. Let's move now to the daily time frame in silver. And of course, that's exactly what we see is that, here's price bumping along the 200-day moving average. Got some positive price movement towards the end of the week last week. MACD hinting at a bottom with the histogram, indicator lines potentially bottoming out, rounding back up. Energy based on stochastics potentially rising higher. Mining stocks, this is our weekly time frame. In GDXJ, this is what we use as our big picture indicator for what is the current trend in the mining stocks. Obviously, again, this is more of a pullback than we would have liked to have seen in the mining stocks. And yet, we have a double bottom back in early 21, and so far this bottom or potential bottom is above that double bottom level. So again, bottom, higher high, higher low, potentially higher high. So we haven't violated our uptrend yet in the mining stocks, although have to acknowledge that, that's not the kind of action we'd prefer to see. Energy is still elevated, although dropping sharply. MACD, let's zoom in on that just for curiosity's sake. So MACD has not risen above the 0 level. So MACD is still in bear mode and both indicator lines below 0. So not what we'd like to see in MACD either. Let's drop down to the daily time frame. Positive. Apologize, folks. This chart's a little bit more cluttered than I prefer to show. But the bullish note here is in the volume action, where this is last week, this is the week prior, where we got this big impulsive gap downward, big rise in volume. So what I'd like to suggest is that that's a capitulation bottoming. Buyers are puking their shares into the market and then selling is exhausted. So as we bump sideways, this is not strong action, but volume is declining. Sellers aren't interested in selling their shares at this level, which creates the potential for a bottom at this level. So this candle on Friday I was disappointed. I was hoping for a more bullish candle on Friday. Obviously, price closing near its low is not bullish, but that's what we got. MACD histogram, again, hinting at potential bottom. Stochastics or energy is really in the tank there for the mining stocks. Still, really, it's a repeat of GDXJ, same kind of pattern in volume. The fact that volume is declining as price consolidates sideways, that's actually bullish, indicative of a uptrend. This is uptrending volume action. So the dollar, this is what in my opinion, this is primarily what the precious metals markets are reacting to. It's the strength in the dollar. So we got this big bullish candlestick in the week prior. This is in the weekly time frame. Now last week, basically, we got a consolidation, sideways bumping, whatever you want to call that. But notice that it's happened above the 40-week moving average. So that's basically, that's positive action. You couldn't ask for more than that. After a big bullish move, we would expect sideways consolidation at best, or even a little bit of a pullback. So really that's positive action from a bullish perspective in this weekly time. Now here in the daily, more of the same. So look at the long lower wicks or tails on these candlesticks in last week's action. So that's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. These are all doji candlesticks with long lower tails. Those are bullish candlesticks. We have some other bullish indicators. We have MACD in bull mode. It's on a buy signal. Energy is elevated. For what that's worth, we've got a crossover buy signal on the 20-50 moving day averages, 200-day moving average providing support. This is all bullish action. There's no reason not to expect higher prices in the US dollar. And of course, that would be a headwind for the precious metals sector. So something to keep in mind. Interest rates here in the weekly time frame, so far all we've gotten is a pullback from this big impulsive price movement, interest rate movement in 2021. This is a 38.2% Fibonacci retracement of this price movement from 1% up to 175-ish. So far we have to maintain the possibility that all we have is a gentle pullback before interest rates head higher. In the daily time frame, we're getting a bunch of basically sideways action. I wouldn't want to trade this personally. There's nothing here that indicates to me a decisive indication of price movement. We might look at MACD as potentially bottoming out at an oversold level. So this is what I was hinting at before. MACD is not bounded, but it tends to trade or move within a range. And so potentially MACD has reached an oversold level where a tradable bottom might occur. So potentially the next week or two, we might expect higher interest rates. Let's keep rolling. Equity markets obviously moved higher last week. This is the SPX. It has pushed up into potentially a resistance level. It's got a little bit more room to move, but let's keep in mind this Andrews pitchfork is identifying what is potentially a level where price will run out of energy and either consolidate or pull back. And again, we've got a little higher that we could move. Stochastics or energy obviously elevated, but rolling over and potentially flattening out. MACD, let's zoom in on MACD. Obviously, we've got a new buy signal. Lots of room to run. If we want to talk about this being our overbought level in MACD, well, obviously price has a long way to go before reaching that level of overbought. So, but as a prognostication, we might expect a little bit of higher action in SPX before it ran into resistance and stopped. Now Dow, in catching up with SPX, so notice that the Dow has not made a new high since this point back here a couple of weeks ago. SPX new all-time high last week. So Dow's got some catching up to do and somewhat easy moving overhead. All the Dow has to do at this point is reach the prior high, whereas the SPX is pushing into new all-time highs. So potentially the Dow has less overhead resistance at this point. MACD is hinting upward action based on the histogram and the indicator lines heading back up. Stochastics, energy obviously elevated and rapidly rising. So if I were betting on the equity markets for next week, I'd probably throw some money at the Dow. Here last week in the NASDAQ obviously ran into resistance at the median line of this Andrews pitchfork and bumped sideways on Thursday and Friday. So in contrast to the Dow, I would not bet my money on the NASDAQ for next week. In the Brent market, price just keeps pushing higher And last week, I think we had our, this purple ellipse. I think we had it set at about $77. And so as the price action keeps moving higher and time keeps passing, we continue moving our price target higher. And so this week, our price target moves up to what is coincidentally the $80 round number. And so it wouldn't be surprising to see price push on up into 80 at this point as a round number. And of course, the round number or any obvious price target acts as a price magnet or can act as a price magnet. So at this point, we have the $80 level acting as a price magnet in Brent. We've got a long ways to go. Well, not a long ways, but we have plenty of room in MACD before we get to the overbought level. So $80 seems like a realistic target in Brent. Folks, I've babbled for long enough. Have a fantastic week going forward. I hope you make lots of money and, more importantly, enjoy your lives.